All right, welcome back to the Hang and Hunt podcast, where we're hanging out today and we're talking about suburban versus rural hunting.
I'm Billy. This is Taylor.
So let's get into it. I'm sure you get this all the time, man, because I get it all the time too, where we start talking about urban hunting, what we do, and it's very easy to explain what we do as urban hunting because we start talking about the deer density and the massive overpopulation of whitetail deer here. So the stat that really stuck with me a long time ago was from Kevin Rose, who's a buddy of ours who has since relocated to Montana. Kevin worked for the Department of Fish and Game here, and he told me that the deer density, the carrying capacity for our area was 11 to 14 deer per square mile, something south of
Under
15.
20.
Yeah, definitely
right.
under 20. And their best guess, we had 400 to 425 deer per square mile.
All right, so let's explain a little bit the difference between biological carrying capacity and cultural carrying capacity. So biological carrying capacity means the number of deer that are optimal for the ecosystem.
Right.
Cultural carrying capacity varies widely, right? If you are in a suburb where the deer are eating people's roses and azaleas and ruining their landscapes, there's some people there who culturally would like 0 deer there.
Yeah.
And now you have other, hunting states, big time hunting states that they're like, man, I really wish we had more deer in our state. We wish we could have 400 deer per square mile.
And
right?
they think differently of the deer. And I think it's important to note that, like, at a 30,000 foot view, basically what we've done here in Northern Virginia is we've taken pretty medium to poor quality whitetail habitat in our woods here, and we've replaced those woods with suburban homes. And with that replacement, each one of those homes has a yard with the pretty landscaping and the bushes and the flowers, and the deer just devour it. And also what we've done is we've taken traditionally huntable habitat and replaced it with traditionally unhuntable habitat. Now, obviously, we would argue differently because we thrive in that environment, but generally, we are providing better food for whitetails we could argue that point as well, but generally, we're taking away just the woody browse and we're replacing it with fertilized food sources that they might not prefer, but they're able to live off of. And then we're taking away hunting opportunities to where now it's like the perfect scenario for
There's no predators.
Exactly.
There are very few hunters, typically have been in those suburban settings. So the population is going to explode. One of the reasons we have cultural pushback on the deer density in these areas, it's not because people don't like seeing deer in the parks. It's because their cars are just walloping them on every road, even small residential roads, and then the landscaping it's being destroyed.
Yeah. There's literally there's a lengthy list of stuff that you can't plant. I mean, you can plant it, but it was going to be devoured. I had a hosta in my backyard when I first moved in here.
Salad.
I didn't know what it was. It was just like this little bulb. It was like eaten down to the ground. I could tell it was a large plant at one point. It wasn't until I moved in here and started removing deer that I then realized, I'm like, oh, that's a giant hosta.
Yep.
Root ball is like half the size of this table. I'm like, that's a beautiful, beautiful plant. I made that come back, But we joke about it, but it's really bad. Just generally how many deer there are. But in our explaining of that, people assume that, urban hunting is really easy because there are deer everywhere. And it's not that there are, like when we say there are 420 deer per square mile, it's not that there's a square mile and then there are 420 deer evenly distributed in that square, right? There are pockets where they're going to thrive in, like parks or floodplain areas or just natural areas that the deer would migrate to. And there are going to be spots that are like no deer that are worthless. And so in our mission of going in and hunting those deer and having that kind of mindset, it's definitely not easy to kill them. Now, you can get on them and see a good number of deer. Like we could go hop in my car right now and go drive around and probably see some deer. But, I try to explain it to people like this. I'm like, deer do not want to die. deer want to survive just like every other animal out there, and they've been, they have evolved to not die.
Mm-hmm.
And
so when we get into one of those situations where we can hunt a property, we can hunt, let's say it's a 2-acre property or a 5-acre property. That's one 5-acre property in a neighborhood that may be 300 acres. As soon as we kill a couple deer in that 2-acre lot, they say, "Oh, danger zone. I'll just stay out of that too.
I'll avoid that tree.
I'll avoid that single tree."
Right.
Exactly.
And then they're elsewhere. And so, like, as we start looking at the differences between suburban and rural hunting, I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind is like, hunting to me is chess, right? Sometimes the way I do it, it's more like checkers. But
Tic-tac-toe.
Yeah, exactly. Or hangman. But it's a calculated game. Mm-hmm. And you need to know the prey, and you need to be able to kind of think ahead about your access and your ingress, egress, and think about what you're disturbing as you're going into that area. Well, now if you take that game that I'd be playing on like a 500-acre farm or a 100-acre farm, whatever it is, and you now restrict me to an acre, if we're lucky.
How dynamic can you be in a 40-yard by 40-yard backyard?
And even more so, 40 by 40 that has a 10 by 30 chunk of woods with 2 trees you can climb in it.
And an anti-hunter on one side.
Yeah, and I have to park at the dude's driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to walk in one way. And now you have constrained me to this tiny little box where, I mean, I'm at the point where I explain this to people where I think urban hunting is significantly harder than hunting in a rural area. And my justification for that is all the additional factors that go into urban hunting. And
I think it's property lines for me. That's the most difficult part, is the access. If you have a 100-acre floodplain, right around where we hunt, and you had access to the entire thing, oh my gosh, that'd be incredible. But now, it's not just the access of we're hunting this one property. It's 2 acres. It's 3, even let's say, God forbid, 5 acres. If you shoot a deer also, and it runs 200 yards away, how many 1-acre properties
do you have to knock on?
Do you have to go through on 200-yard run?
Yeah.
That's a real challenge. So we have to limit our shots. We don't take 40 and 50-yard bombs. I don't do that really much. Anyway, I've taken longer shots before, but in tight settings, I've definitely passed on many, many deer that are in that 30 to 40-yard range that I go, I know I can do it.
Yeah.
But I can't risk, in this situation, in this setting, to have a deer run 150 yards. It's got to die within 50.
Yeah. The difference between 50 yards and pile up and 150 to 250 yards is all of those doors, like you mentioned, that you have to knock on to get
Maybe
permission
the police.
to track. Yep. And on top of that, the optics to the neighborhood, right? Because a lot of these homeowners are putting their faith in you as a respectable, ethical, stand-up, good representative of hunting. They don't want to hear from their neighbors that, oh, that guy that you let hunt here came over and knocked on the door yesterday because a deer ran away, or had to go look for a deer back here, or God forbid, I had a deer pile up in my yard and I called the neighbor, kind of thing, where, there are now, in that example, that 150-yard run, if there are 5 or 6 homeowners now that you have to knock on the door of, get permission, well, now those people are aware that you're operating in that area. And I don't care how pro-hunting somebody is that you have permission from, if their neighbor next door or 2 doors down or whatever is starting to put pressure on them for allowing you to hunt there, you're done. Mm-hmm. And I don't blame the homeowner if
they
that
live
happens.
there. They have to live there.
They have to see that person all the time. Mm-hmm. You got to drive past the mailbox. You got to wave at them or have your kid go by their Halloween, whatever
Taylor,
it is.
you can't hunt anymore. My neighbors are TPing and egging my house.
Yeah.
Well, that's because you're an asshole.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with us hunting.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with us. Yeah, but and so, when you're hunting in a rural area, you have just one property owner. And obviously you have adjacent owners, but I mean, even on that big farm, you only have so many options as to how many landowners that abut that property. It's a significantly smaller number, and you're so much further removed from the property lines. I mean, there's spots that you and I hunt that, I mean, I'm thinking of one right now, it's right down the street, that, I mean, we're hunting in the bottom of this floodplain, and they're like 8 $3 to $5 million houses up on the hills looking down into where we're hunting. I mean, even as far as when we're coming in or leaving a property, we have to be mindful of our headlamps, mindful of where we're parking. You know, multiple times you and I have been out and had the police interactions, not because we're doing anything wrong, but just because the neighbors are seeing what's going on, or they drive past a car.
They don't know what's going on. They see a vehicle that it's out of place.
Yep.
So, and I don't blame them for neighborhood watch. They want to take care of their friends and their neighbors. They see something suspicious. You know, they want to investigate, or at least call the landowner.
For sure.
You know.
But that's just something else that we have to deal with, that I would be very surprised to hear from rural hunters that have had, you know, multiple police interactions. Because you go to a farm, you drive down the entrance
you're
or whatever access,
road and,
or even if you're parking on the side of the road. I mean, through all my years hunting in rural environments, I've had one interaction with a game warden, and he just happened to be driving by when I was walking out and stopped and checked me for my license. I'm on public land in the mountains. It's like, yeah, I expect that guy to ask me for my license. He's doing his job, you know? And so, I mean, and also one thing that also comes to mind is scouting.
Sure.
So when you're scouting, in my opinion, in a rural environment, I don't want to say hunting in a rural environment is easy, but if you take a traditional Midwestern farm with thick bedding cover and agricultural fields and some fingers that run up into those fields, I think it's relatively pretty easy to figure out where the deer are feeding, figure out how you want to access that specific spot. You know, where are they bedding? Where are they feeding? How can I get in here and intercept from point A to point B with the proper wind, and really put an action plan together pretty well. Now,
and I do want to touch on this, though. You're saying it's easy to formulate that plan, but the execution is the difficulty,
whole other
right?
Story.
So when we talk about the difference between suburban versus rural and easy versus difficult and that type of thing, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
You're not saying that going and killing a big buck on a rural property is easier than, and vice versa, right?
No. And hell,
we're talking about the nuances of our setups and the challenges that we have.
And there's spots in rural environments that are incredibly difficult to hunt. For example, our place in Ohio, it's a freaking mountain. There's a road that runs down the spine of it. We have some food plots. But other than that, it's just thick woods on a slope like this. And it's like, okay, I can start at the top and kind of work down to the bench, but like the wind, you know, and
I've got to walk back up.
Yeah, and which is tough for me. I'll sleep here. Come for me in a week. But you know, as far as scouting deer in those agricultural areas and figuring out where they are, yes, that's relatively what I would consider easy. You could also say it's easy to find deer in an urban environment because they're in the yard every day, and it's hard to put that game plan together.
But you can only see in those front yards driving by. And go ahead and drive by a bunch of times, two, 3 times a week. People start to notice, look at that truck. It keeps driving by. It's driving slow. It's staring at our yard. It's staring at our house. They're thinking you're a predator or a burglar or something like that. So you may have the police called on you. So that can be difficult too.
Yeah.
I think that on the other side of that, there are some easier things I think that urban hunting allows for us to do. Well, I think there's certain setups that I love to look for, and I will eschew others because I love these. And I love having floodplains that are in between, that run right up the gut of a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like an HOA land I can get permission on, or if one landowner has a big pocket of that. And because there's tons of pinch points in those, you know, sometimes it's hard to find the bedding versus the feeding, because both of them are everywhere.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. I mean, you can, as long as there isn't a dog barking or kids, throwing rocks at the deer or someone hunting, they can bed in the front yard, in the backyard, under the bushes, or down into the floodplain. There's no rhyme or reason
to where they are.
To where they need, because they don't need to be.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't need to be. They don't need to be in a certain place for cover. They don't have tons of predators who are pressuring them, and there's a lot of food everywhere with all these yards.
And that's kind of one of the next things I wanted to think through and chat about is what's interesting is the difference between the two as far as like hunting pressure goes, because it's pros and cons on both sides.
Sure.
Whereas in an urban environment, I feel like the deer kind of work like what I call a circuit, where they're in a spot for a little while, then they kind of move off, and I think it's because they're constantly getting bumped. I think it's a combination of things. I think it's because they're constantly getting bumped, and there's a significant lack of browse. So they kind of are always moving to find the browse, and then the little Timmy and Tommy come out back and spook the deer, and then they run a couple houses down, and then the dog bumps them, and they kind of run a little more, and they'll be here for a couple days and kind of work back through. But it's very unusual to find a property around here that just has deer all the time. And then add into that our interactions with them, where we're going in and we're trying to be as minimally invasive as possible, but we're still there. We crack a couple deer inevitably, and then they bounce off, and the cycle continues. Whereas in a rural environment, you have an easier way of controlling those deer. So take the big soybean field with the deer on the back of it, early season kind of thing, where they're bedding in that little thicket. They're coming back on whatever corner the wind is blowing into, and generally they're going to be there day in and out. However, if you go in there and bump them, like, they are not used to smelling human scent, the human interactions. Like, we can get away with a lot more here to some extent than deer in a rural area can. But it's always interesting to me how perceptive the urban deer are when it comes to what I call like that bubble, right? Where they know that I'm going to walk out in my yard and shoot my bow all the time. And there will be deer 50 yards into the creek bottom here behind my own house.
Yeah, they were right by your target the one day when we were shooting.
Exactly. And except if we walk into the woods to pull the trail camera card that I have back there, they will booger. They'll blow, because they know that limit of disturbance that I come up to, but it's unusual for me to cross. And, you see that a lot in the areas that we're hunting also, where a homeowner, the same setup as my yard. There's grass and then there's woods. And when you start crossing into the woods a lot, they pick up on it. They're very perceptive. So I don't think we're able to really get away with a ton more, but I can't tell you how many times, like at our place in Ohio, the wind will switch, and then all of a sudden I hear snorting like 100 yards off, and I'm like, man, you know?
I think around here, around these urban sites, when we do just walk in and scout, for example, even during the season, it's just like someone else, some kid running through the woods. It's very common for these deer to see that. You go to a more rural setting where no one walks through woods in these certain areas, and maybe you're the only person hunting there. You go through and scout there, and you bump a big buck. He gone. Yeah, he may be gone forever.
Yeah,
you may never see him. So I think that's definitely a different aspect. But like you said, as soon as you get up into a tree, they know. Yeah. They know the difference. It's like they know what's out of the ordinary. They see those patterns, and they pick up on those patterns. When it's out of the ordinary and they recognize it, again, that's another boom, and they're gone.
Well, and that's why, regardless of hunting in an urban or a rural environment, your access is so critical. Because even if you go in a manner and come out and you don't bump any deer, those deer are going to cross your foot traffic. They're going to smell that you were in there, and they know what's up. They know that okay, a two-legger was here, something's wrong, or they're coming after us. That's a predator. and they're going to adjust their travel accordingly.
Yeah, and especially late season, there's hardly any cover. It's all deciduous trees. You walk in and you can see through the woods because, like you said, there's no browse, there's no understory, and it's all deciduous, and you can see for a couple hundred yards. If the deer are bedded within a couple hundred yards and they know you hunt there, go climb a tree and waste a couple hours in the evening because they're going to go, oh, there he is. I'm going the other way. That's a big challenge. And you only have one entrance point, one exit point. It's the end of the cul-de-sac. You can pull into the driveway. Exactly. And as soon as you walk into the yard, that's where the deer are.
Yeah. Well, we even, you and I hunt on a property that's a little bit bigger of a property, and the driveway runs in with a couple mounds overlooking it. And we later found out that the bigger, more mature bucks on that property were bedding in a spot to overlook the driveway, not in a spot that you would historically see bedding in. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it logically, it makes sense. They're like, well, you bed to watch out for predators. We're the predators. Like, they know when the big truck comes rolling in that they're going to booger. Mm-hmm. And that when the little, smart car is driving up and down with the big old flag coming out the top, they don't have to worry about anything.
Maybe you should disguise and go in a Prius.
Okay, so funny you mentioned that. I am going to take an Uber in there next year.
Well, that's kind of like what we've dropped each other off before.
Mm-hmm. And that is like, we joke, but that's like the urban version of having the farmer take you to the tree stand. Mm-hmm. Because, and that kind of relates back to what we were talking about, where like the deer know what to look for and what to avoid. Yeah. Or they know what's out of the ordinary.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And if you can stick to the ordinary as much as possible, whatever that ordinary is, I think you're in good shape. Because if you're riding in with the farmer on the tractor, or if you're taking an Uber in and getting dropped off in some little like commuter car, or you and we've done this before. We've walked in together, and then I'll turn around and leave while you climb a tree.
Like we're checking cameras or something like that, yeah.
And that, it's amazing how quickly deer will come back out. Or the same thing, like you and I keep track of when the landscapers come to a lot of these properties in the fall. And when they're blowing leaves, we'll come run out there while they're blowing leaves and climb into the tree, which is hilarious to the guys that are blowing leaves because they're like, what is this weirdo doing, right? But we give them all venison. They love it. So, but, when you run in behind those leaf blowers and you climb a tree, those deer come running out when those leaf blowers leave because they like that little grass.
Yep, and the acorns are there. They like uncover them. It's like, oh, thank you so much. Yeah,
exactly. And so
it's little tricks like that.
Well, but it's all about kind of regardless if you're hunting in urban or a rural environment, like figure out what's normal here and how can I use that to my advantage to slip in. But it's funny because regardless of property size, the property size obviously is a big determining factor between them, but the deer density does not make urban hunting easier. I think that the property line, the tiny kind of area we get to color inside of really makes it very difficult, especially when you factor in the number of neighbors that we have to interact with. And the majority of people that we're interacting with are on the fence about hunting to begin with. Like very rarely do we knock on a door and somebody's like, "Oh, hell yeah, brother, go knock them down." Right? They're normally
even more rare when they say, "I already hunt here."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And that is right. And so now it's like most of the time it's like, and that's a great response. Mm-hmm. Right. And if instead of just getting a no or somebody screaming at you, and the scent, obviously the interactions, what are some other things you can think of that are like major differences between rural and urban hunting?
Well, it's the oddities, right? It's those odd little situations that we've gotten into. So, do you remember? I know you remember the very first time you and I hunted on a suburban property together.
Yeah,
remember that?
Yeah.
I think I doubled.
Yes.
Okay. I think like you shot
minutes
one.
into the hunt.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I shot one because that's what led to the issue.
Yeah.
Oh.
No. But that property is.
Yeah.
We can tell that story.
Yeah.
On that property, I was at full draw on a deer, and it was really early in the morning, right next to a golf course, and I'm within 20 yards. I was in that kill tree. I was within 20 or 30 yards of the house, and I'm at full draw on a doe, and something out of the corner of my eye towards the house, there was movement, okay? And I'm at full draw, and I'm ready to drill this doe, and I look over, and there's two little kids. They're like 2, 3, 4 years old, looking out the window, watching the deer. I knew they weren't looking at me. I could see them looking at the deer, and I'm like, and I let down, and I didn't shoot that deer because of that. I mean, that was a prime, like 15-yard slam dunk, 150-pound doe. I wanted to take her out, and I didn't shoot. You know, how often do you have that? There have been other times in same situation where the landowners are watching out the window, and you're at full draw, and they're watching you, and you know you can see them cheering for you to shoot. And talk about pressure.
Yeah.
You know, or when, you know, like you've got one buck tag left and a small forky or a real nice big 11-pointer walks out.
Virginia 11-pointer.
Yeah. And you pass it, and you've had it happen. You try to get to your truck, but before you get there, the landowner comes out. I thought you were here to kill deer. Yeah, I saw a deer walk right by you. You didn't even shoot it. Why didn't you shoot that deer? And you're always like, well, wasn't the shot I was looking for. I mean, what else can you say?
Yeah.
And sometimes they get a little irritated. They're like, look, I gave you permission to be on my property. Kill these deer.
Yeah.
So I oblige.
Well, yeah. And that is one other thing, though, is the fact that, you know, we're not hunting target bucks, right? Part of the deal that we have with these people, and it's really what we owe to the population of deer control or deer management, is we need to kill every deer that we have an ethical shot on. And, you know, we limit ourselves to close shots, and we're not going to take anything unless it's a slam dunk 12 ring. But at the same time, it's hard to shoot like a little 115-inch 8-pointer when, like, they're big deer running around here. They're good deer. Now it's definitely hard to get on them and hunt them, and that's a whole other story because of the property lines, whatever. But I mean, it's tough to crack a 115-inch little basket rack 8-pointer that, you know, it doesn't excite you.
It's tougher
as far
for
as a
you
buck.
than it is for me.
This is true.
I like them.
Yeah. Well, they all taste the same, and we know that I'm going to make sure I'm fed more than anything. But yeah, it's definitely it's an adjustment factor, and it's funny because now we've been doing this for so long that I'm at the point where, like, on our Ohio farm, I see a doe coming in, and I like grab my bow, and then I have to think to myself, I'm like, oh wait,
we're buck
stop.
hunting here.
Yeah, I'm not in kill mode 24/7. Safety back on, like, chill out. But I mean, I just love shooting stuff with a bow and arrow, and I know you do too. And that's one of the reasons that this is such a great environment for us to hunt in. And it's kind of funny how, like, we both stumbled into this urban hunting, and we both had different paths into it. But it's funny how if you're, like, really passionate about something, you'll find a way to do it. And it's just so cool to me to think about how, like, not only did we luck into this scenario for urban hunting, because we're both here because our family businesses are here.
Sure,
and that's
absolutely.
what drew us back to this area. I'm pretty sure we'd both live in Montana or somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, Utah, Montana. So it'd be somewhere,
somewhere very
where you
rural.
get one deer tag, right?
Yeah, it's
and you have
coveted.
to draw, right?
Yeah, but that sounds awful. But think about that compared to we have unlimited tags. Like, I mean,
now we still have to pay for them.
Yeah.
But as many antlerless tags
that we want. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, we start thinking about this, and yes, it's difficult dealing with all the property owners. Yes, there are a lot of, oddities that we incur. There's a lot of red tape that we have to go through. There's a lot of stuff that we've dealt with along the way. But to be able to hunt 365 days a year, to be able to look at the weather this week, and for us to have to restrain ourselves from hunting instead of having to beg to go hunt, and to just be able to shoot as many deer as you want. And the other thing is, it's important to point out that we have the most phenomenal program ever here in Virginia called Hunters for the Hungry, where we are able to take every deer we shoot, and every scrap of meat from that deer goes to feeding people in need, people, whether it be homeless or less fortunate or whatever. But that to me makes it even that much better.
Oh, sure.
Because
absolutely.
I can eat a lot of food, but I'm not eating as many deer as we kill a year.
No, I mean, I think we go through, depending on if I kill an elk or not, which I didn't this past year. But we'll eat 5 or 6 deer, my family, every year. But any more that I shoot, I have to give away. Luckily, there are plenty of people who want it. Absolutely. And Hunters for the Hungry is an ideal place. It goes right to a butcher. The butcher gets a little cash in his pocket. And then, as a nonprofit organization, they're able to supply and disseminate that food to, all across the state, really.
Yeah. It's awesome. And so the other thing is, I think it's really important for the people that live in this area to know that we're doing that with the meat as well.
Yeah.
But, and granted, a lot of these comparisons, you have a pretty good amount of rural hunting experience. My rural hunting experience wasn't on private land. It's mostly public land with a little bit of private land mixed in. And, even now, the rural properties that I hunt still in the state of Virginia are all relatively close by, where I still am dealing with the same kind of oddities. But it's amazing to me when you get up into like our place in Ohio that we hunt, or when we go out west to, Missouri and hunt, or whatever, Iowa, Illinois, insert Midwestern state here. It's just so cool to like be able to just go out into the farm and hunt and not worry about the neighbors or not worry about your headlamp.
And you can think, I can go wherever I want. Yeah. As far as I can see, I can go hunt wherever. Now, the deer densities in a lot of those places are a lot lower, so there's a different type of scouting. There's a different, means to it, but you still, it's refreshing to be able to say, oh, I can pick any tree I want.
Yeah.
It might be the worst tree on the farm, but
I picked it. Now, you mentioned scouting. When you're scouting an urban spot, are you looking for anything different than what you're looking for in a rural area? That's a loaded question, though, because let's pretend postseason scouting, because I think you and I look for different stuff scouting depending on time of season or what we're trying to do. So let's just say postseason scouting an area. What are you looking for in the suburbs versus a rural spot?
Space, number one. I'm not usually going to go into. I'll check out Onyx to see.
Is this in the burbs or is this
in the suburbs? Okay. Yeah. If they're all quarter-acre lots, and there isn't a nice, decent-sized lot there, I don't even look at the neighborhood. So first is size of properties. The second thing is type of vegetation. So you talk about postseason. I'll go find the thickest, nastiest, most impenetrable areas right now for late season into spring green up, because that's where all the deer are going to be.
Yep.
But those spots are sometimes too thick and too miserable to hunt throughout the summer, late summer, early fall, late fall, and even around Christmas time. Sometimes those areas are still too thick, even after most of the leaves have gone down. So space is number one, and then the second is the vegetation type. I think last in these settings is topography, because we don't usually have much of a we don't have enough access to say, oh, well, I'm going to hunt on the lee side of this, huge hill today. Well, I don't have a property over there. I only have this one property. So those are the three that I really look at. I mean, all of them are going to have deer. Even the wide open areas are going to have deer, but those are the three things that I pick first.
And then when you're hunting in a rural area, are you starting with topography first?
If it's a blank canvas and I just want to go find a place to hunt.
Brand new farm.
Oh, so I already have the farm?
You have the farm, brand new spot.
Okay.
Never been boots on the ground before.
Okay, so if I don't have a farm, I'm going to look for where the deer are, right, first, which farms that I do want to hunt in. Then the second thing right off the bat is, where's the bedding? Where are they bedding in relation to where I can access?
Yeah.
Because from there, it's all about food. You know that they're going to bed for security, and they're going to go eat to fill their bellies. So then I can kind of play off of that.
Yeah.
And it would be tough for me to go to a property and hunt a property that it had, I don't care how great it is, But if it has poor access and you're bumping deer or causing some abnormality that throws them off of their game, I'd rather find a new spot.
Yeah, well, you're gonna be spinning your wheels in the mud.
Exactly.
Right? So it's funny.
So I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think part of that is because we're able to hunt so much, and because we do get to have a lot of tree time. We want to be as efficient as possible, whether we're hunting in the burbs or hunting in a rural spot. We might have some sits that are more observation type sits, but I'm still trying to kill something. I mean, my observation sit is still in an area that has a potential.
You're still
for
bringing
harvest.
your bow.
Yes, for sure. I'm not sitting in the car with my binos. But yeah, like if I go and scout a urban spot, I'm doing exactly what you're doing, where I'm looking for the thickest spot possible. So like from a bird's eye view, I'm trying to find those large congregations of spots like creek beds or travel corridors in general. Get in there, find those big, thick cover spots. That's where they're bedding. It's pretty easy to find the trails out of them.
Yep.
And then start figuring out my access. And then the other thing I do is I run around and I mark every white oak I'll ever see. Because come September, I'm going to go find one or a handful that are dropping.
It's funny how you pull up Onyx and it's like, ooh, look at that concentration right there.
Yeah.
And then
it looks like a roadmap.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And I think one of the benefits of that also is that when you have years like we did, it was 2 years ago when we hardly had any white oaks that dropped. This year was kind of so this upcoming year should be great. But 2 years ago, it was like non-existent. But if you pick every single white oak on that property, there's going to be one that's dropping.
Yep.
So if you're in a grove and there's nothing there and you're not seeing deer, they're somewhere. They're close.
Yeah.
They're in another area. They're on another tree, and if you find that one tree that's dropping, game.
For sure. And what's cool is between you and I, we have enough spots.
Yeah.
Where we have enough white oaks marked that we're like, come September, we're laying them out. It's just a matter of where are they. It might take us a day or two to kind of find them, and that's where cell cameras and stuff like that have really shortened the learning curve for us as far as figuring out which property to go to kill.
That's cell cameras have been a complete game changer.
Yeah.
In the way that I hunt. I'm definitely not wasting as much time as I did before. My hunts per deer has gone down. I'm just more efficient now.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is it cheating?
I think it depends on how you use it. I mean, I really like using them in areas where
I want to put 100 on a 1 acre property, so I can just map them out.
Spend that money, buddy. That's a lot of coverage plans. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to me. I love them. I find myself though trying to. I think you have to use them correctly.
Yeah.
Because it's not a shortcut. It's no different than hanging a trail camera and coming back a year later and checking it and using it as intel. You're just getting the intel real time. And so you need to use that to still think like proactively into the future instead of like when I first got trail cameras, I found myself being a day behind because I'm like getting a picture and I'm like going there and I'm like, what are you doing? This isn't. Think about why they're using this still. Think about, where's the bedding, where's the food. You just know that they're using the area, and I really like it for knowing about access. So like at our place in Ohio, I have one right on the front gate. I don't see any deer on it. I'm looking for people. And, a lot of the spots that we're hunting in the urban environment get a lot of pressure from outside people that aren't hunters, but maybe there's some high school kids that are going to crush beers on a Friday night, or somebody wandering through the woods blatantly trespassing, or whatever is going on, especially now with COVID and people just being outdoors more. I like making sure that I'm not going in to hunt a spot that a couple stoner dudes went and smoked a blunt in the day before.
One of the other things that I've just recently started doing is I used to take, let's say I have 10 trail cameras. I'd go put them on 10 properties. Now I don't do that. Now I'll take a trail camera and put it on a good focal point and then put my other trail cameras off of the access to that. So then I'm seeing where the deer are going. So let's say I've got a funnel, for example, between bedding and feeding areas. I will put one on that funnel because it's a no-brainer. You're going to get the most pictures there. But then I put my others on the travel corridor and the different travel paths that they can get to that funnel. Yep. So then I can narrow down exactly where they're coming from. That has helped me tremendously. I'll focus camera in one spot, and then not far away, 20, 30 yards away, I'll put another camera facing in a different direction. And if I'm not getting any pictures there, then I know there's no deer coming from that direction. And I'll turn it. I'll go move it and turn it.
Yep.
See if, so it just gives me a map.
And it's smart to do that. And that works regardless of if you're in an urban or rural environment.
Sure.
I mean, and that's kind of like, at the end of the day, deer are deer, right? They're going to bed where it's safest. They're going to eat, they're going to travel to food. They're going to bed primarily close to where their food source is, or, you get the layered bedding and you can go down the rabbit holes as deep as you want. But deer are deer. They're a prey species. They're trying not to die. They want to eat, they want to sleep, and they want to fornicate for a couple weeks a year.
Come on.
Bring it home, buddy. And so they're just like me.
Yeah. Just a couple weeks a year.
Yeah. A couple weeks, like a day. It's my birthday. But yeah, and so, you get a bunch of these like other factors, and you can compare apples to oranges to some extent between urban and rural, whatever. And there's some fun examples that we can go into on both. But generally, you have to figure out your path through the stuff, but you're doing the same thing. They're just different barriers that you're kind of going around, whether it be a bunch of property owners or access to deer that aren't used to people, or how to cross that bubble as lightly as possible. Whatever it might be, there are a bunch of factors, but there really aren't that many differences at a high level.
It's not the deer that have the differences. It's where we're hunting.
Yeah.
So, you had talked about, you kind of wanted to do tales from the Burbs, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about a story that both of us were involved in that you're not going to find very much in a rural setting. Okay. So we're coming up on a year. So when COVID first hit, you and I were hunting, and it's a pretty suburban area. There's a lot of houses around, and we're texting back and forth, probably making lewd jokes.
For sure.
We were
safe bet.
We were within about 75 to 100 yards of each other.
Yeah, well, so let's set the scene, because where we're hunting is it's a development, and this individual bought 2 lots. So we're hunting on an outlot that has no house on it, near a couple other houses. And when this area was first getting developed, there was a driveway that the developer put in to drive to the top of this hill and look around and show off the entire parcel. And so when this dude bought that lot, that driveway just became grass, which is now our parking spot. So we call it the driveway to nowhere. But we pulled in on the driveway. You parked behind me. We met up. We talked for a bit, and we went out to our trees. And so I was probably like 200 yards from
the truck,
and you were probably 100 yards from the truck, but you were more parallel with the road, and I was more in on like a 30-degree angle from you, 45-degree angle.
And you were also faced in the direction of the vehicles, because you texted me something sexual, and then you said, hey, I think someone just pulled up behind our trucks.
Yep.
Someone's parked there.
And so it was in the dark, and I saw the amber light on of a car, and I pulled my binos out, and the sun was literally like coming up, or it was gray light, but it wasn't like fully sunlight. I remember looking up and seeing the light of a car, and I could see the front quarter panel, and I was like, oh, what's going on here? I think it was a Ford Taurus.
I couldn't see.
It was like red, and it looked like a crackhead's car. And I'm like, oh no, is this? My first thought was, this is a like crackhead from the city that's out here like stealing stuff from people's house. Some weird, obscure thought that you have.
Yeah, but it's hard to see, because you were probably close to 200 yards away.
Yeah, I was a ways away. But my first instinct was, it's like a beat up POS car. Like it looked weird. And then I was texting you. I said, do you see that car or something? And I think you said, yeah, I don't know what they're doing. And then you said, my truck dome lights came on.
Yeah.
That they're in my car. I'm getting down.
Yep. I could actually, so I looked back and I could see someone walking around our trucks. And then, when you open up a door, a lot of times the exterior lights and the dome light, obviously the dome light's going to come on, but the exterior lights will come on.
Yeah, it was your cab light, I think, is what it's the thing that comes into your
Yeah, I also saw like the signal lights, on my car. When you open it up, everything kind of flashes once. And I said, "That son of a bitch he's in my truck. I'm getting down right now."
Yeah.
And so I immediately, I'm putting stuff to the ground. I get down to the ground. My sticks, I'm about to start putting my sticks together, cradled up, and I heard someone walking in the woods. And at first I thought it was you. I was like, wow, how'd he get down so fast, But then as I look up, I hear, put your hands where I can see him.
Freeze!
Don't you fucking move.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And at that point, you had started recording with your phone.
So, we're in a floodplain. The topography kind of comes down the hill, and I was looking at our cars, and I started getting a little concerned when you said that they were in your car, because, it looks like, my first thought, crackhead car. Now your door's open, like they're robbing your car, and my car's next. I actually remember pulling my phone out and trying to lock my car via the app.
You were too far away.
Yeah, I don't think I had service or whatever. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see a police officer coming down the hill with his machine gun, his rifle, his patrol rifle, like shouldered, like at the high ready, I guess is the proper term.
Pointed at my face.
Yeah, and screaming. And I just remember the feeling of like how heightened this police officer, like the level that he had raised this to, right? Like gun shouldered, and I'm like, oh my God. And I remember I took my phone out and I recorded it. When I first saw the guy, the officer, I started recording it because I'm like, oh, this is a good example to show people what we have to deal with in the suburbs, right? Like a cop is interrupting our hunt. And then when I saw him, when he started screaming at you, and I could hear in his voice like how elevated he was, I got really freaked out.
He was nervous.
Yeah, and I was freaked out. Because I'm like, this dude's going to shoot Billy.
Yep.
Was my first thought.
So then he gets over to me, and I'm frozen. Hands are up, and I had a stick in my hand. He probably didn't know what the hell the stick was. Also,
thank God you didn't turn it, like look at him.
Yeah, what if I had my bow or crossbow or something, and I just turned towards,
like what?
Yeah. So he comes over, and he gets behind me, and he frisks me, and that is, that's the first time I've ever had someone literally, full on grab every bit of my body and make sure I didn't have a penknife, right? So then he's going, are you here by yourself? I'm like, I've got a buddy. He's right over there. He's like, then he got really freaked out. He's like, hey, come over here.
I remember he was like, where's your buddy?
Where's he at?
Yeah, where's he at? That's what he said.
And then Taylor's like, I'm here. I'm coming. He said, you're not coming fast enough. He's like, sir, I'm in a tree. I'm trying to get down. You need to get here now. And he's yelling at Taylor.
He was so mad. And I remember I was trying to explain in my mind.
I can't jump out of a tree.
Yeah, and I have all this crap, and like as you climb the tree, like all my stuff is layered to come out. I can't just bail out of the tree, and so I'm like trying to put my camera away, and I wish I had recorded this. And I just like swung over out of the way in my backpack and dropped down. And I was hunting in a tree that had some like pegs in it, so it was kind of awkward to like come off the platform and come down the tree. But I remember I walked over with my hands up, and I think you were on your knees with your hands interlocked, right?
Yeah, and that's right, because he searched us both at the same time, didn't he? No, he searched me first. So at that point, I think he was able to allow me to step away and like...
I just remember I was like, sir, what is going on? And he was like, I didn't ask you to talk. I told you to shut your mouth. And I'm like, dude, like it's pretty obvious what we're doing, right? At least, to anybody that is able to walk
Yeah.
and chew gum at the same time. They should know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And
So then he checks all of our licenses, our permission forms, and everything, and we're totally
legit.
We're legit. We're good to go. So then everything at that point calms down. Okay, to a
mild roar.
reasonable level, right? Yeah. And I think you said, hey, so whoever called and complained about us, can you tell us who it is, or can you talk to them and say, hey, these people have permission to be here? And he said,
nobody called.
No one called. We got you guys on thermal.
On the drone.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
On the drone.
Yeah.
I said, you don't have a drone. What are you talking about?
At first, remember, I had heard a helicopter go over earlier, so I just, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe they were using. I don't know. I'm not a police officer.
I'm not a criminal. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. I don't do these types of things. I don't run from cops. I don't hide from cops very often. So we kind of. It was an abrupt ending.
He just left.
He just says, "All right, well," and then he didn't walk towards his car. He walked up towards the house. I'm like, oh, he's going to go up and ask permission or ask the landowner if we have permission there. He got up to the driveway and then walked down to his car. And then he turned and went deeper into the neighborhood. 15, 20 minutes later, he came creeping back out and left. So I was definitely shook up having a gun pointed at my face. I was worried. And to back up a little bit, we've had interactions with police officers literally dozens of times while hunting. Very similar situations, except they've never come into the woods on us.
Ever.
They've always gone to the vehicles. I've had them, squeak the siren. I've also had them just call, hey, come on out, guys, come on out. They have to check. Maybe they got a call. Maybe they got a complaint, whatever it was. And, that's why we always have our paperwork and licenses and permission forms and everything.
Well, it makes sense from like a tactical standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Wait by the car. Don't just go in.
He went in blind to two guys that have weapons. Didn't know how many people. But, so we talked.
He also radioed, once we both got down there, something like, yeah, I got him. You can take the guns off him now.
Yeah, he did say something like that.
There was like a sniper up there watching us.
That's right.
And then he told us, I'm not a regular cop. I'm a special cop.
Yeah.
And we said, what are you doing? Like, what are you talking about? And every question we asked was answered with like, shut up. I didn't tell you to talk kind of attitude. And I just remember at the time it was like, whoa, we need to de-escalate this situation because this guy's really ramping it up. And then afterwards, after the adrenaline wore off, it was like, wait a minute.
That shouldn't have happened like that. Police officers don't act like that.
And he should have given us a card.
Then we started thinking, maybe that guy wasn't really a cop.
And remember, his uniform was weird. He had some like weird patches or something.
The things were odd. So we started talking to people, other law enforcement folks, and they're like, whoa. And they saw the video. They're like, whoa, something's definitely wrong here. You definitely need to go into the police station and, talk to someone in there who can give you some answers.
Yeah, I actually called and dispatched to see if there was a police officer like out on patrol in that area or something, because it was super odd.
Yeah.
And we ended up going in and meeting with his captain. Or was it captain?
I think.
Lieutenant.
I don't know.
Superior officer.
It was his superior, and they even told us, he said, look, and that was right when COVID hit, right when everyone was locked down. Technically, people were saying you shouldn't have even been out of your home, but in our state, we were allowed to go out and do recreational activities and things like that. Hunting and fishing, you were allowed to do that, and we were out doing it. I thought when he first came up, I'm like, he's pulling a gun on me because I'm not in lockdown, don't have a mask on. Yeah. What the hell, man? I'm going to cough on you right now, So, but then we talked to the superior officer, or his superior, and he said, look, guy doesn't get out much, out of the office, and he really was kind of like on a, we're numbers are low because of COVID. We don't have as many officers out, so we need to get some more people out, and I appreciate. And we showed him the video, and he's like, well, and he did take both perspectives, I thought, very fairly and objectively.
Yeah.
And he said, look, from his perspective, he didn't know what was going on. He might have told you, certain things because he was trying to protect himself. Maybe you guys had weapons, and he wants to protect himself. I get that too. And, but yeah, there were people who were definitely suggesting that we should, go after him and things like that. And that wasn't the point. It was more. And remember, we were even going back and forth. Let's not even report it because it's not a big deal. The guy was just, thought he was just doing his job. But then after we had really talked about it, talked to other folks, they said, at the bare minimum, if that officer, because that's a fluke. I mean, we've dealt with dozens and dozens of officers who are just awesome. They know what they're doing. They're awesome. They do exactly what they're supposed to do, and they're there to serve and protect. And that guy maybe was just a little more gung ho than he needed to be. So maybe that needed to be checked.
Yeah, and I think one of the main things, because we were going back and forth about even reporting it. Because it's important to know we are both like huge supporters of law enforcement, right?
Absolutely.
And we're like, dude, I'm not trying to cause a problem for this guy. Like, I'm not the dude who's like yelling World Star and recording something going on, right? It was more of, we got to the point where we're like, hey, this doesn't add up in my mind, and I want to make sure this guy is really a cop.
That's right.
Because I don't want to be hunting in the, going in and out of the woods in the dark, whether it's morning or evening hunts. One of them is in the dark, and I don't want this dude to be some like weirdo guy who like wants to be a cop and never made it past the psych eval or something, and he's running around with a gun.
Yeah, because it was his actions were so out of the ordinary. If any police officer we've ever dealt with, and then we started thinking, maybe he isn't a cop. It's like all the conspiracy theories kind of coming out, Maybe he's trying to take our hunting spot. He's trying to scare us off of it. No, not really. But I mean, those things, I think that was, when we started talking about it that way, that I remember saying to you, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go and at least talk to him. And because he wanted to see if we wanted to make a formal report and everything else. We said no. That was not the point, is to get this guy in trouble. The point was we wanted to find out if he was a real police officer, one. And then two, is this proper protocol? Is there, like, because that's frightening if that's standard. Yeah. Right. And his superior officer said, look, he was a little too gung-ho. He was very diplomatic about how...
He was pretty diplomatic about
how he apologized. He said, well, it probably shouldn't have happened in that way. I'm sure it won't happen again. And that's kind of how
he was very political and poised in his response.
There's a reason he was the superior, right?
But yeah, it was funny. Looking back on it now, we can laugh at it, but it was terrifying.
Absolutely.
To me. And then thinking through, you were hunting with a crossbow because we were, longer story, we were in there targeting a specific animal that really needed to get harvested. You're looking for that doe that somebody else had shot with an arrow.
Well, we didn't know if it was shot or if it was just sick. And recently their CWD's been in the state. It's like, it looked like something was wrong, but on camera we thought there might have been an arrow injury, but when they get that messed up fur with CWD, you don't know what it is. So it's just like, all right, let's go in there and smoke her.
Right. And so, but you had your crossbow, and thinking about if you had just been, if the timing had been just slightly different, and you had turned around with your crossbow in your hand, or
in my hand, accidentally, like I didn't know he was coming, and I pointed in the direction.
Yeah, or even your climbing stick.
Yeah.
And this dude already had the gun up. Oh, ready to rock. And that could have been
because when I looked up, I saw the barrel, like, pointed at my face.
Of an M4.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is not good.
Nope. And
it took me a long time to, like, calm down from that day. I vividly remember that.
We talked on the phone, like, 50 times that day.
Yeah, well, and...
texting back and forth.
And we had I think I put the video on Instagram, and it, like, caught... viral legs.
It blew. Could you imagine if that would have gone out like right after all the George Floyd stuff?
Oof.
Oh, that would have been bad.
That would have been really bad.
That would have been terrible. I'm actually glad it didn't, because that would have put an even worse light on law enforcement that shouldn't have been.
Yeah, we weren't trying to do that.
No.
We were just like, the only reason I was filming it to begin with was like, oh, look, the cops are here. Like, this is what we deal with in the burbs.
Yeah.
And then
all of a sudden he's like shouldering his rifle.
Yeah, I was like, oh gosh, like this is bad. Like no, monkey bad. This is not good.
That makes me think. I need to look in the mirror and see how ugly I really am. See, he pulled a gun on me,
Yeah, but and I think his like superior officer said that he like thought we were in a park.
Yeah.
Did he say like he thought we were like illegally in a park, like robbing a house or something?
Yep.
Apparently
there had been a lot of robberies in the area.
And he was like, he'd been riding a desk for a while. Yeah, and thought like, oh, I did it.
This is my opportunity.
I cracked it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I got him.
He's pulling his patrol rifle on two hunters that like live down the street.
You know, thank God we didn't like shoot a deer, okay, and take our camo off and have blood up to our wrists walking out of a backyard.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been really bad.
Yeah. You know, and we're talking about the differences between like urban and rural spots. Like,
Urban and Earl.
Bourbon.
That sounds like a great podcast. That's Ruben and Earl.
A fourth glass of bourbon. But yeah, like we learned very quickly that we can't use body bags to transport deer in the suburbs because you will interact with the police, and it is not good to have the cop shine his light on you after you just slung the body bag in the back of your truck.
But body bags, without a doubt, are the best way to transport.
Hands
literally,
down.
well, bodies.
Yeah, they're made to carry that load. They got the really nice handles on them. They hold the blood in. They're great. I remember I was doing a podcast with, I think the guys at Vortex, and they were like, where do you buy body bags? I was like, Amazon. And he was like, shut up. And he, sure enough, I think it was Jimmy, he like pulled up Amazon. And he's like, oh my God, there are like 30 different brands on here. I'm like, well, yeah, it's a big business.
Some are better than others.
People are dying to get into them.
Right.
Dad jokes.
Those ones that were rubber lined were the best because no blood came out of them at all. And they had the real heavy Cordura or whatever handles. Could not destroy them.
Yeah. Well,
like, we need T&K hunting gear to make us a body bag. You'll never destroy it.
We'll get Carl Koseth to make one for us for a tethered. It'll be all First Light. Everything,
yeah, it'll be
probably.
First Light, yeah.
Well, do you have anything else you want to add on urban versus rural?
No. I think we covered the gist, and there are definitely many misconceptions about urban hunting. Some people say, "Oh, that's not even hunting. You're not really hunting. It's
fish in a barrel."
Yeah, fish in a barrel or whatever.
Come on, buddy, come and try it. No, and yeah, to that point, like it is super hard. I would venture out and say it is impossible to kill more than like 3 or 4 deer out of the same tree from the same family group.
Well, I think if you spread them out. You'd have from the same family group. If you try to just keep going back and back and back, I mean,
over like a year. I mean, we have trees that we
try to
hundreds of deer out.
Yeah, but you have to you have to really spread them out over time.
Yeah, the key is to understand that every time you're going in on those spots, you're kind of interrupting the area or disrupting it, and you have to, select your access points just like you do in a rural area. But yeah, I mean. In a nutshell, it's kind of the same, but it's super different.
Yep. So, it is, but it isn't.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks guys for checking in. If you have any questions or anything that you want some more of an explanation on, or if you want to hear some more stories and tales from the Burbs,
we have a few.
Yeah, definitely no shortage. Let us know. Leave a comment below, and thanks for checking us out.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.